Hi, myself Ilan Cherian, Technical Director at Comet Computer Private Limited. In this video, we'll be discussing about the introduction to cloud computing. First of all, we need to understand what is cloud computing. Cloud computing is a computing service which is offered over the public internet. Usually, we use the term internet cloud to represent or indicate internet service. Here, the computing service is offered over the public internet, so we call it as a cloud computing. Up to me, cloud computing is not a new technology, it is a new business model in computing. In on-premises computing environment, the company owns the data center, but when using the cloud computing, the service provider is going to own the data center. In on-premises computing, data center may be in one location, end user may be in a different location, and both the location will be interconnected using a public internet with a secure VPN connection. Similarly, when using cloud data center, VPN connection will be established between the cloud data center and the on-premises end user location. And there is no difference from the end user point of view using on-premises data center resources or cloud data center resources. So end user is going to use their services or the resources in the same way they used in the on-premises infrastructure. And now we'll understand the benefits of cloud computing. The cloud computing resources, the service provider offers the resources with a different pricing option. Out of that, one is the pay-as-you-go model. So in this pay-as-you-go model, as a cloud customer, we need not to put any investment. So initially, we can create whatever the resources we want, and after creating the resources, we can use those resources. We'll get the bill at the end of the month, and after that, we can pay for it. So initially there is no investment, so you need not to have any upfront investment on the resources like servers or storage or network or whatever it is. So we are going to use the resource. After the usage, after 30 days, we are going to pay for it. And the cloud resources, as a service provider, the resources provided is going to be the virtualized resources. Say example, if I want Windows Server 2019. So I can log on to the portal and then I can create the virtual machine with the Windows Server 2019. So for which the cloud service provider will be creating a virtual machine for me, and that will be provided to me, so where I can use it. So not only the virtual machine, all the resources, it might be a storage resource, or it might be a network resource, or it might be a security resource, whatever you name it. So all the resources are going to be provided as virtual resources and self-service. So if you want to create any resource like a virtual machine or a storage or a firewall or whatever you name it, you need not to depend on anyone else. You can just log on to the cloud service providers portal, and then you can create whatever the resource you want, and those resources will be created and it will be ready for you. So where as a customer, we can create whatever the resource we want, and whenever the resource is not required, you can delete at any time. So immediately the billing stops. Okay, so the resource configuration and management, it will be completely under the cloud customer's control. And the very good advantage about the cloud computing is we can have the resources created as soon as possible. So we can have our project started as soon as possible, and we can complete the project as soon as possible, and we can deliver the product to the market in right time. So if it is a on-premises infrastructure, if I want to have some servers and storages, if I release the purchase order today, and it will take a month or 2 months to get delivered the product. After that, configuring the servers and then testing the servers, and then getting into the production, it is going to be a time-consuming thing. But whereas when it comes to the cloud environment, cloud computing environment, we can just create the resources whenever we need, and we can destroy it whenever it is not needed. So starting a new project as soon as possible it is available in the cloud, whereas it is not at all possible in the on-premises infrastructure. And coming to the availability, even this availability configuration is also possible in on-premises infrastructure, but with high cost. Say, example, if I have a file server or a mail server or a SQL server, so if required, we can configure the failover cluster. But for configuring failover cluster for one particular server, at least we need two servers, and also we need a SAN storage to provide the storage space. So again, we can configure the failover cluster, but the cost is going to be high. But whenever it comes to the cloud environment, where the cloud service provider is taking care of most of the high availability configurations, it means that they have the data center, they have all the physical servers clustered in the hypervisor level, so that the high availability is ensured in the hypervisor level itself. And even more high availability is required, we can also have the certain configurations which is available in the cloud service providers features. So using that, we can also have more high availability also. And scalability, there is also a very big advantage. So whenever we need to increase the resource of the servers, we can do it whenever we need. And also if we don't want that much of resource, if we want to reduce the resource, we can reduce the resource at any time. Even you can also use auto scaling feature for this, so that you can increase the resources, reduce the resources based on the consumption. So based on the load requirement, so the system itself can automatically scale up or scale down. So these are all some of the important features of the cloud computing. And in cloud computing, we have different deployment models: private cloud, community cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. So if it is a private cloud, the cloud is entirely operated by a single organization, and the data center may be in on-premises or in a different location. Maybe if it is in a different location, VPN will be established between these two locations, and then the users can access the resources securely. And coming to the community cloud, it is actually shared by several entities that have a common purpose, maybe on-premises or off-premises. And coming to the public cloud, the resources are available to the general public, and the resources can be owned by a single organization, or we can, as a customer, we can use the cloud resources of multiple service providers also. It depends. And coming to the hybrid cloud, so hybrid cloud is a combination of two or more private or community clouds, or even public clouds. And this cloud computing has different service models. So out of that, these three are the topmost service model, that is software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Speaking about software as a service, the software which is required by the user, maybe the end user. Say example, the end user requires the MS Office package, so that is offered as a service. And if the end user requires Adobe Photoshop, that is provided as a service. So here, as a customer, as an end user, we need not to do any configurations. We can just log on to the a given portal or the given plugin, and we can start using the application. So the application is going to be running from the service provider's resources. So as a customer, we are just going to use the software. So that is about the software as a service. And coming to the platform as a service, usually this platform as a service is widely used by the application developers. So example, I'm a software developer. I have developed an ERP application. For running my ERP application, I need a Apache or IIS server. So where this cloud service provider will be providing me the server with Apache running or IIS running, whichever is my requirement. So where I can just upload my ERP application codes, and then I can start using it. So here the platform required to run my application is provided as a service. So as a cloud user, I'll have to do a few configurations. So the rest of the things are going to be managed by the cloud service provider itself. And coming to the infrastructure as a service, and this is going to be the complete replacement of the on-premises data center. So where as a cloud service provider, they'll have the physical servers, they'll have the physical network, and they'll have the physical storage, and they'll have all the security configurations implemented. And also on top of the physical server, they'll have the hypervisor installed, and the hypervisor, up to hypervisor, is going to be managed by the cloud service provider. And as a customer, as a cloud user, here what I'll do is I'll just create a virtual network on top of the cloud service provider's hypervisor layer. So we have to create the virtual network. On top of the virtual network, we can create the virtual machines, and we can configure the storage, we can configure the firewall. So whatever the resources required, or whatever the configuration required on top of the hypervisor layer, so everything is going to be configured and managed by the cloud service cloud user, that is the cloud customer. So the entire infrastructure resources required to run my business, so that is going to be provided as a service, so that we call it as the infrastructure as a service. And here I have given some of the examples for software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And here we have some Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics CRM, or Oracle, or even Adobe Photoshop. So these are all some of the examples for software as a service. And for platform as a service, so Microsoft Windows Azure offers the platform as a service, and Google also offers the platform as a service, and there are many other service providers. And for infrastructure as a service, we have Amazon or Microsoft, that is Windows Azure, or even AWS. We have AT&T, and a lot more. And coming to the comparison between these services, so if you're in a traditional IT infrastructure, that is in on-premises infrastructure, so all the resources, including the physical network, storage, servers, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and application, everything is going to be managed by the organization itself. When it comes to the infrastructure as a service, where the physical network, storage, servers, virtualization, and the operating system, some part of operating system is going to be managed by the cloud service provider, and some part of the operating system, middleware, runtime, data, and application is going to be managed by the cloud user. And if it is a platform as a service, the physical network, storage, servers, virtualization, operating system, middleware, runtime, everything is going to be managed by the cloud service provider. Whereas as a customer, we are going to manage only the application and the data on top of it. And if it is a software as a service, everything is going to be managed by the service provider itself. As a customer, we are just going to use the software. So where the entire responsibility is taken care by the service provider itself. And that's all about the introduction to cloud computing. So in the next upcoming videos, we'll be discussing in detail about each and every service providers, example AWS and Azure. So we'll be discussing these later videos. Thank you. Have a great day.